Okay, tonight's game is Tigris and Euphrates. This is, well, you can see I'm playing with the first edition, the first Mayfair edition, first English edition here. I picked it up used. This is a game that I remembered playing once. It's kind of like same story with Ra. I remember playing it once and enjoying it. And then, I don't know, maybe I played it once more or something and still kind of liked it. Never really got many chances to play it. I don't think anyone in our normal group had it. So we had, maybe somebody would come to the con. I think my friend Pat would come to the con, and he was the one who had Ra. I think he must have had this too. Sometimes it would break out. But I would very seldomly get a chance to play it. And I really wanted to give it another shot here. Like most of my intros, there are other people who've done the rules and probably do it a lot better. To a large extent, I'm going to cover the rules, not because I think I do them well, although nobody's yelled at me and said, damn it, don't bother with them on games that other people cover. So it helps me to teach them out loud. So feel free to go find someone else's because they probably understand the game a lot better. I skimmed through the rules, or I read the rules today, skimmed through them again just very briefly to make sure, whoa, wait, after I started setting up. All right, what are these tiles for? Because one of them seems to be missing in my set. And what the hell are these for? Well, it turns out neither of them are terribly useful. I also had to make sure I had the right number, the right little cities there, because in the rule book, these sure look purple. Turns out the blue ones look purple in the rule book. And I have an extra one kicking around. I also have a pile of extra pieces. Oh, there's my bowl. Cool. I have a pile of extra pieces I don't know what to do with. Presumably for lost pieces to replace them, but these guys don't seem to serve any purpose. These guys don't seem to serve much purpose. You put them on the board. You only need one of them, perhaps. So I'm thinking maybe there was some other ideas being kicked around for the game. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play it the way it is and the way I understand it. All right, let's start. Everybody gets set up with a dynasty, and the dynasty is marked by the symbol on them. And now that we found the bowl, we have that. And they have that same symbol on these wooden pieces that they have. The colors don't matter. And they also have it on their screen, behind which they get to hide the tiles that they're going to play, which are contained over here in this nice bag. I don't know if the game came with a bag, but that's a nice bag. So I always give a big thumbs up when somebody sells me a game and it comes with, some kind of component like that. Let's see. No, there is supposed to be a bag. Cool. Some of the times, like one I got a Crown Royal bag in it. I'm like, yeah, that's probably better than the original was. But this one's pretty decent, so I'm pretty happy with it. Okay. These monuments come apart, and you got to make sure you get the right assembly and setup of them, and that's one of the little things. You also have on the board, and I like this board in some ways better than the more modern ones. This is the one I remember, and there's something very pretty about it. All that blue. I love blue. And there's blue everywhere. And I like the box better. But from what I understand, the second Mayfair edition comes with lots of additional goodies in it, including another map on the other side and a somewhat more muted version. All these things are temples. They're going to be kind of the centers of the civilizations. On top of them are treasure markers, which are victory points that you can gather during the game through various, through specific means. The goal of the game is to collect victory points. There's 4 different colors of these cubes, and there's bigger cubes. Whoa, I really got to remember not to pan that quickly. There's bigger cubes to indicate how they're worth 5 each. So you'll be collecting these, okay? What does that mean? Well, at the end of the game, however many cubes you have in your least large color is your score, all right? And you get rated by that. But these little white treasure cubes, if you manage to pick those up, Well, they count as wild cubes, and you can throw them onto whatever your lowest score is to boost it. Just so that, they don't add directly to your score. So, like, if you had, I don't know, 6 blue cubes and 5 green cubes, well, you could add it to your blue cubes and you'd have a score of 6 if you had 1 treasure cube. If you had 2 treasure cubes, well, you could add 1 to your blue thing, raise yourself up to a minimum of 6, but then you only have 1 left, so you're stuck at 6. So they're not tremendously valuable, but they're better than any other cubes because they can always be accorded to whatever your weakest is, and that's the one that counts for victory. So you want to kind of build up a balanced set of scores, which means different people may have different objectives at different points in the game. If you've already got a good collection of scores of one particular color, you don't necessarily want to collect more of that color. You want to be aiming towards improving your weaker side. Now these little screens are used to hide your cubes behind so that, well, it's a perfect information game, but as long as nobody's recording anything, there becomes a little bit of a memory factor, and I kind of like that. Otherwise, the game becomes so calculable. That's something I don't like with the open information games. Oh, he's got 6 of those. I've got to get 1 more. It makes them. It drags the games down, slows them down, and ends up causing a great deal of pain in them. So one of the factors that I like about this is that it has that hidden information aspect. Not that that's going to matter too much when I play solo, but I certainly won't be doing the calculations. You also hide your hand of chips. And the chips the use of the chips is going to kind of remind me of a choir here. You'll see why in a moment. I think each player starts out with 6 of those in their hand behind their thing. Yeah. And then he's got his other stuff out front. Okay. So. Okay, let me define the term by the rule book so that I can move on in its order. So there's this idea of a kingdom. And a kingdom is a set of connected tiles. And I'm going to just use these little things for no real reason. With a leader attached to them. These wooden discs are leaders. If there's 1 or more leaders attached to a thing, it becomes a kingdom. And there's certain aspects to kingdoms that are important to how you score, how you collect points, what you can play, etc. So, on your turn, you have 4 things, any one of 4, or no, sorry, any 2, and you can repeat the action of 4 things that you can do on your turn. The first option is to position a leader. You grab one of your leaders and you can slap him on the board. He has to be next to a temple. Now there are some restrictions to where you can put a leader. He's got to be on an empty space. He's got to be adjacent to a temple. He can't be put in a river. Rivers are limited to one particular type of tile, the blue tile. Blue stands for farms, of course. And you can't put them in a way which would unite 2 kingdoms together. Now, I believe you also, yes, you can do that. That's a challenge. Okay. You can place a leader of this in an area where there's another player's leader. Okay. You could even place one where there's another player's leader of the same color, but that's going to institute a special kind of challenge round, which I'll explain in a moment. All right. So that's pretty much the restrictions on placing leaders. Some of the times this will cause some stuff to happen. If for any reason temples are destroyed, removed from the board or whatever, in such a way that a leader is no longer next to him, the leader kicks back into the player's hand. And in terms of place, well, you can move them on the board when you place them. You can pull them back to your hand as a place action. Generally, you're putting them on the board. But sometimes you might want to say, I want them over here instead. And move them from one space to another. Placing a tile. Well, you're going to have a handful of these tiles. And you're allowed to put one pretty much anywhere you like on the board. You don't usually do that, though. What you're usually going to do, well, not anywhere on the board. You can go on any empty space, except if it's blue, it can only go on rivers, and nothing else can go on them. And you can't place it on the board if it would unite more than two different kingdoms, okay? I had to reread that because I didn't realize what they mean. But what they're saying is if there's a kingdom, and kingdoms are joined not diagonally, things are only adjacent like this, horizontally, vertically. Well, if I placed this piece, I'd be no, I wouldn't. If I placed this piece, I'd be uniting, and there were rulers in place somewhere, I'd be uniting a couple of kingdoms. It's possible, though, that there could be pieces connecting so that I could play one piece and connect more than two kingdoms, and I cannot play a tile under those circumstances. Put these back up. Okay. When you play a tile, if it's in a kingdom, there's a possibility that victory points are gained for it. Well, how does that happen? Well, the kingdom has to have a leader of the appropriate color. Let's see. So red is not the appropriate color, so if I play a tile here, no victory points are gained. But if I grabbed a green tile and put it next to that kingdom, and this is all one kingdom, you're connected through the ruler or through the leader as well, well, now the guy who has that color ruler goes over and grabs a color cube of the proper color. And remember, those are what you're trying to collect. So you probably want to get your leaders in place before you start building up your kingdoms. You don't want to just throw pieces on the board without getting victory points, I would think. Now, if there's no leader of the right color in the place, but there's a black leader, he gains the chip, the victory point marker for that play. Okay, so now it's beginning to look like you want to put your black leaders, who are your kings, on the board early on. That way you can develop your kingdom without, having to worry too much about what leaders are there. Of course, other people may start placing next to your kingdom and depriving you of points by saying, okay, well, next time there's a red placed, I'm going to get it, not you. And there's not a lot you can do about that except by challenging them with your own leader. So, you don't get a victory point if the tile is placed so it's not in a kingdom, or if there's no proper leader, including a king, who can receive the victory point, or if it's placed so that it connects two kingdoms together. Now that's even true if those kingdoms don't create any conflicts, and we'll explain that in a moment, what a conflict is. But you might guess, well, it would be a problem if a kingdom included two things of the same color, and indeed, that's how a conflict arises. All right. So instead, you have, for the game, two of these catastrophe tiles. You can play one of these as one of your plays. And you can play it on top of a space, and you destroy the piece under it, to essentially cancel that space for the rest of the game. Nothing can go in it anymore. And it doesn't count as one of what it is anymore. You cannot play it where there's a treasure, and you cannot play it on a tile that has grown a monument. You don't know how to grow a monument yet. That's fair. Okay. Another option you can make is you can swap up to 6 of your tiles. You throw them back in the bag. No, you pull the number you're refreshing from the bag, and then the tiles that you put out are discarded into the box. If you swap tiles as your first action, you're allowed to use one of them as your second action to place it. After you do 2 actions, then Well, then you would judge whether your leaders who are linked with monuments, you look at your leaders and see if they're linked with monuments. If you have one or more leaders who's in a kingdom with a monument, and he's one of the colors of that monument, you'll get some additional victory points, and then you get your hand size increased back up to 6 pieces. You can see with the tile laying and the merger type thing why I say it's a little like Acquire in terms of thoughts here, the concept behind it, but the play is nothing like Acquire. Okay. Everyone else will also refresh their tiles. Now you could say, how could they lose pieces? Well, we haven't gotten to the conflict rules in which they could use up pieces. So, there's 2 kinds of conflicts. One kind of conflict comes when someone plays a leader of the same color. Ruh-roh. Well, that can't stay that way. That's an internal conflict, and that's like a rebellion or a revolt. The person who placed the new leader on the board is or positioned it in that place, is the attacker. The other person is going to be the defender, and they're both going to get strength from temples. They get a number of strength points equal to the number of temples they're adjacent to. Now, in this case, they're both adjacent to 1, but here this guy would be adjacent to 2. Okay. Well, that sounds pretty deterministic, right? Well, then the 2 players, starting with the attacker, get to commit pieces, temples specifically in this case, from behind their screens, their hand, to the battle. So the attacker would slap down, hey, I'm putting 3 additional temples into this. Well, that's pretty mighty. And if the defender can beat that, they can play it. Now, they can also, it's an option to make it that restrictive, but they can also play additional temples even if they can't beat it. And that allows them to throw some chips out of their pool and get a new draw during someone else's turn, which might be a kind of neat little opportunity that otherwise isn't available. External conflicts occur when 2 kingdoms join together, and I don't have enough pieces on the board to connect 2 kingdoms, so I don't really want to pull them out and show that again. But if 2 kingdoms are joined together, I guess you put this little marker on the space that just joined them, because that's not really in play for this temporary moment. And now, each player, first of all, nobody gets any victory points for this, the new tile. Each player is going to check if they have leaders that are now in conflict due to the 2 new kingdoms connecting together. Well, then that has to be resolved, and that'll be resolved in a somewhat similar manner. The first thing you do in each resolution is you decide who the attacker is. If the active player has a leader involved in a conflict, he's the attacker. Otherwise, it's the next person in order, normally clockwise. Of course, I'll change that. Who's the attacker? And it's important who the attacker is because they have a disadvantage. They have to reveal their bonus chits first, right? You count supporters. That's going to be the number of tiles of the same color as the leader that are in the original kingdom, okay? So if 2 kingdoms connect, now let's say these 2 kingdoms somehow connected. There's a couple of pieces here, I don't know. Anyway. If those 2 kingdoms come to connect, well, this guy has 1. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to position it out better. If 2 kingdoms connect, the tile that, the color that the 2 leaders are, so in this case, we'd need a green vase and a green donkey. If these 2 kingdoms were to connect, this one has 1 for say they connected here, and let's say there's another piece here, I don't know what, something that can't be, but whatever. This one has 1 for the, whatever that is, merchants or whatever, within his kingdom. That's his base defensive value. This guy has none of those in his kingdom. It doesn't matter, they don't have to be next to them or anything. he would still have this one to count. And then the players can again commit tiles from behind their hand of the color that's in conflict. Okay, well, wait a minute. What if it's king versus king? Kings are black. There are black tiles. That's right. Okay. I forgot about that, but yes, there are black tiles. I don't know what they're representing. This game isn't really very representative of anything. Settlements. They're called settlements. Okay. So anyway, that's how the conflicts are resolved when two kingdoms clash together. When you win an external conflict, the loser has to remove his leader and withdraw all his supporters. So let's say this guy lost. He would come off and this would come off. Now that could break the kingdom back into pieces at this point. Is there an order between how these are done? I'm not sure that that's listed. There does not seem to be an ordering to how the external conflicts are going to happen. The active player decides which ones to be resolved first. So there may no longer be a conflict after some pieces have been withdrawn because the kingdom might be broken into pieces. Okay. And where else am I? The victor gets a victory point in the color for the withdrawn leader and for each of the losing supporters removed from the board. Any extra pieces thrown in from behind the screen don't count. The defeated leader goes back to the losing player. Supporters of the defeated leader and extra supporters added or discarded out of the game. If two priests cause a conflict, I don't know what priests are. That's fair enough. I think they're red because that would go with temples. But we got to look that up, right? Yeah, there we go. 4 priests, red. Great. All right, so if 2 priests cause the conflict, then there's an exception. Temples which bear a treasure or have another leader adjacent to them are not removed. The victory points are only awarded for the priest and temples that are actually removed from the board. All right. So this is why this conflict situation is why other people might be losing tiles and have to draw from the bag. All right, monument building. If you build a set of pieces in such a way that 4 of them form a big square when you put a piece down. I don't want to show the example particularly. You get to place a monument, and all the pieces flip over to this side. First, any external conflict is resolved, and if the square still exists, the big square, then you get to make the monument. If you don't build the monument, then the tiles do not get turned face down, and no monument can ever be built there until those pieces get taken away, and at least some of them, and replaced. Those 4 face down tiles will still count as part of the region and kingdom, joining leaders and tiles. However, they don't count for supporters in a conflict anymore. Once built, a monument cannot be destroyed. When 4 temples are turned face down and a monument is built, if there's a treasure on one of the temples, it stays on the flipped over tile. If a leader is no longer adjacent to a temple, the leader is going to be removed from the board at that point. Okay. Monuments are going to generate victory points at the end of each player's turn. At the end of their turn, if they have leaders in the same kingdom as a monument with the same color, and that's either part of the color, there's 2 parts, 2 colors to any monument, they get a token of that color. It can generate victory points for multiple leaders in a player's turn if they have 2 in the same thing. A king only gets victory points when linked to a black monument. He doesn't get the same kind of bonus he gets off placement. Okay, and the final thing here is treasures, and I hope I can finish this real quick. Treasures There are 10 of these on the board at the beginning of the game. And if a kingdom has more than one treasure at the end of a player's turn, then if someone has the traitor, the green piece, in the kingdom, they get all but one of those treasures. They get to choose whichever ones they want. However, they must take the ones in the four corners of the board first. Well, I'm not sure what the four corners of the board are. The four corner temples on the board. Yeah, I can't really tell that. Is this a corner temple or this? Huh? I don't know. I guess it's whichever one's closer. 1, 2, 3. It's got to be that one. But that's kind of a weird thought. Anyway, that's what we got there. As I said, the game ends when, I don't know. When there's only one or two treasures on the board, or if all tiles in the bag are exhausted and someone can't redraw. This happens immediately if you try to swap tiles or something, so it could happen at the end of your at the middle of your turn. At this point, everybody pulls their screens away and you count up. And whoever has the biggest, least victory points in one color wins the game. Tied? Well, you keep going down. Second worst number between them, etc. That's simple. All right, this was a little longer than probably was needed to be and much less useful, but we'll get on with the playthrough.